Well, the abrupt ouster of Sam Altman as the CEO of OpenAI on the 17th of November has set off a series of events that have culminated in the return of Altman to the corner office at the company he founded and with a newly curated board of his choice. Sam Altman was ready to join Microsoft with co-founder Greg Brockman, with most employees from OpenAI, which has left lawmakers wondering if they can really rely on visionary leaders and influential companies to keep us safe without regulation. Altman may have reclaimed his throne at the frontier of the AI world, and while the whirlwind saga that played out on social media lasted 5 days, it certainly left us with questions of governance at both the management and board level. The turmoil at OpenAI has also raised questions on complex corporate structures. This has also cast a spotlight on the dynamics of the founder power, the role of investors, and the significance of employees as equal stakeholders in the quest to build businesses of the future. In this case specifically, there are also questions on the power OpenAI wields on the global artificial intelligence architecture. The upheaval underscores the adage, with great power comes great responsibility, echoing Attorney General Merrick Garland, who said in his remarks on the Binance matter that corporations only act through individuals who run them. End of quote. Hello and welcome to Young Turks, India's longest running show on startups and entrepreneurship. I'm Shereen Bhan. Joining me today to discuss the implications of the OpenAI saga is Sanjay Nath, the co-founder and managing partner at Blume Ventures. Also with me straight from the Valley, They've Khare, partner at Lightspeed, and Rajesh Sawhney, the founder and CEO of GSF Accelerator. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Well, there's a lot that we don't know about Sam Altman's ouster and his eventual return. To start with, we don't really know what the board was concerned about. Here's what we do know for a fact, and because that has been something that has been publicly made clear by Brad Lightcap, the CEO of OpenAI, when he said in an internal memo to employees saying that we can definitely say that the board's decision was not made in response to malfeasance or anything related to our financial business, safety, security, or privacy practices. This was a breakdown in communication between Sam and the board. Now, Dev Khare, let me come to you first, only because you're in the Valley, so closest to the action geographically, quite literally. Dev, what do you make of what has transpired over the last 5 days?
Hi, Shereen. Thanks for having me on. Look, I think a lot of us are viewing the Twitter feeds and sort of the Whisper network and sort of reacting to things. So it's wouldn't be right to speculate, but I think the main lessons that we're drawing from this echo a little bit of what you said. There is discussions to be had about innovation in the AI world versus safety. I think there's discussions to be had on corporate governance and structures, government regulation, and then finally the role of open source models versus proprietary models. I think these are 4 areas that sort of got highlighted in this last few days, and people are on different sides of this debate in these 4 areas, and it's worth talking about.
Absolutely. Plenty there worth talking about, and several lessons to take away from this saga, even though we're still piecing together what really transpired. But Sanjay, let me come to you now and address the issue, as they've put it, of communication or the lack thereof, of conflict resolution, and once again, of putting in a system that addresses grievances, addresses disagreements between founders and the board, or investors and the founder, or investors and other stakeholders. The role of stakeholders, employees in this case, had absolutely no say till they formally wrote to the board saying that, look, either you bring him back or we go with him to Microsoft. And finally, the curse of the celebrity CEO, and we've seen this play out story after story. Sanjay, to your mind, what have been the big lessons to take away from the OpenAI saga?
Sure. So, Shereen, this is not a new issue per se, right? If you look at this dynamic between, like, let's say, the board and founders and the tech talent, it's only come to the fore more because it's Sam. Just to begin, sort of, Thanksgiving in the US, just to you use a pun, there's no alternative man, right? It's Altman, in that sense. I think nothing can be taken for granted. What has come to the fore here is that the stakes are very high because of the impact of generative AI, the use cases, You look at all the large companies taking positions, right? It's Anthropic and Google as DeepMind, and of course, Microsoft has such a big position in OpenAI. I think what was what is unexpected and not fully calculated is the impact of talent, the tech talent. The fact that the stakes are so high and that the employees were, let's say, loyal to Sam in this case was perhaps not seen in this chess move. So I think like Dave rightly said, the lessons to draw on is that when you make these decisions, it's complex. There are many moving parts. There are conflicts, there are disclosures, there are other board, there are other not-for-profit board positions. All this has to come into the fore, and clear communication is needed. And that's what a board's responsibility is, right? That you've got to get it all there and weigh the benefits and the risks. So I think it's not an easy answer. It's a very important dynamic, but this will bring to the fore even more importantly communication and disclosures that will be warranted in many future cases.
Absolutely, the importance of communication and disclosure, that point is well made. And yet, at the end of this saga, even after Sam Altman's return, we don't know why he left in the first place, and we don't know why he was brought back. But Rajesh, on the role and the responsibility of the board in this case specifically, one of the board members actually saying that firing Altman would destroy, or in response to the concern that firing Altman would destroy OpenAI, said that would actually be consistent with the mission of the company, with the charter of OpenAI. Now, that's a pretty astounding statement to make. Yes, OpenAI was founded with a certain charter, with a certain mission of universalizing AI for the benefit of humanity. But for the board to take a position that goes as far as to say, we don't really care and we owe no explanation for our action, how do you read that?
Yeah. This is, Shereen, in my mind, OpenAI is not a company. It's an extremely conflict-ridden organization. And I will classify the conflicts in 3 buckets. One is there is a non-profit parent, which has been constituted in 2015, and there is for-profit child. And that's a very complex relationship to manage in itself. And we've seen across the country many difficult manifestations and also a lot of successful examples where it's being managed well, including Tata's. Then there is a second issue of a celebrity CEO who has been brought in, who rightly feels he's created, 100 billion value, and probably not the love from the board or maybe even the compensation that he deserves. So there is that angle also, which I call commercial angles. And the third is a larger context, which I think they've also raised. So there is that narrative across the world that we need to protect humanity against singularity, universalization of AI. And I think clearly the board was constituted with that mandate. The constitution of board reflects that. Versus once you have gone into bet with Satya Nadella and Microsoft, there is a pressure to commercialize and commercialize in many different ways, in which certain compromises have been made, which are usually made in the cases of startups. And history of Microsoft will tell you that they've always released half-baked products, and they've been successful at it. So if you see these 3 buckets leading to many different conflicts, and top of it, I think it was the responsibility of Sam to either constitute the board that reflects the changing reality or have a communication which was broad and open enough. I think he failed there, in my view. So there has been a communication failure. And then there is a drama part of it, the way it gets manifested. There is an American way of sacking CEO without communication. There is an employee revolt. And then there is Satya factor, right? And clearly Satya was 2 steps ahead of the board. Board comes out as a naive board which had not thought through the consequences of its action. They brought in a CEO in a hastily manner. First the CTO of the company, then they got another one. and they just had no idea that Sam had so much of love from employees. And then there was a dubious role by who first said played one way and then played second way. So clearly board cannot not own responsibility of failing such a large mission-driven organization. So there are a lot of lessons for all of us take from this, and maybe in subsequent discussion we can talk more about it.
Absolutely, plenty of lessons. And, since you talk about this conflict between the parent and then the for-profit or the cap profit company, where Microsoft and Satya Nadella are now going to play an even more proportionately higher role. They don't have a board seat. But, Satya Nadella tweeting saying that this is the first essential step on a path to more stable, well-informed, effective governance. Sanjay, let me come to you now with the point that was being made by Rajesh, that can this corporate structure continue, or are we likely to see the ruptures, the friction, the pressure points and the pain that we've seen through this saga emerge once again unless this issue is settled?
Sure. By the way, Dave and Rajesh are both dear friends. I really like the way Rajesh, he's president of Reliance Entertainment. And I like the way also he's characterized some of this. I saw an interesting tweet that said, move over Game of Thrones and Succession, right? This battle is playing out now. So this is interesting. Shereen, I think, I think of this as concentric circles or Venn diagrams. There's the board, there is Sam and his team, Ilya and Meera and everyone. And then there's the tech talent. If you hear this term of the 10x engineer, and that's nowhere truer in AI. If you look at the salaries that are being bandied about, because this is going to be game changing, correct? You go back to a YC batch or even, all of us investing in this. I think this was not calculated that, where the team's allegiances and the alliances would lie. So I think if somebody deconstructed and unpacked all of this, you'd have to think that what is the larger goal? The larger goal is obviously to make an impact. At the same time, there are privacy issues, right? There are so many other issues, and you have to weigh the benefit and costs of everything, and also different constituents. In one sense, the employees basically said yes. There may have been conflicts, and there may have been disclosures, and there may have been sort of, I'm using the word improprieties, but if you're really trying to change the world, like let's say Musk is, then the world is also changed by half crazy people, right? And Sam is that. So I think you can't make sudden moves, and I think the ideal way should have been to take into consideration everybody's perspectives. Yes, here's a rap on the hand. Come out and apologize, and you do this, but don't. Sacking is something else, right? It's a drastic step. So I think maybe it was a chess game that unfolded, in 2 seconds versus 2 minutes. But I'm not saying that anybody is blame free. But in this high stakes game, you've got to take in all the benefits and the risks and compile it all together.
No, and point well taken as far as the tech wars are concerned and the tech talent is concerned, because just as this was unfolding, you had people like Mark Benioff tweeting saying we're willing to match compensation for any AI researcher from OpenAI who would like to move to Salesforce, and Microsoft pretty much had that open offer going for AI talent from OpenAI as well. But Dave, to the point that was being made there by Sanjay, and this brings me to the comment that was an interesting one and perhaps an important one that needs to be considered more seriously or given more attention than it got. It's the Attorney General Merrick Garland in the context of what happened with Binance. And here's Merrick Garland saying that using new technology to break the law does not make you a disruptor, it makes you a criminal. So in this high-stakes battle of innovation, and we're trying to change the world, and so we will redraw boundaries, and we cannot be accountable to anybody but ourselves, and so on and so forth, are we perhaps is there need for supervision? Is there need for regulation? Does this now bring back to fore the debate on this is too large for companies to self-regulate or voluntary code of conduct and so on and so forth? Governments need to step in.
Yeah. I think on the regulatory front, we saw the executive order from President Biden, I think it was 2 weeks ago, which sort of, I think, struck the right tone between allowing innovation to occur and preventing regulatory capture to occur from the larger and better financed incumbents and companies in this space. So I think that was good. I think I I don't want to mix, at least personally speaking, I don't want to mix what happened at OpenAI with anything around breaking the law. I don't think there was any such context when it comes to
No, absolutely. I'm not
OpenAI.
suggesting. I'm
So
not
that's a
suggesting.
separate
I'm not
thing.
suggesting that that the reasons for Sam's ouster had anything to do with breaking the law. I'm trying to make the larger point about this tendency of saying, everything under the garb of innovation and disruption goes, and we're not accountable to anybody, and we don't require any kind of supervision. That culture or that thinking, that attitude, perhaps requires consideration.
It does, and there's been a healthy debate in Silicon Valley here between those 2 points of view, between sort of heavy regulation and completely open innovation. And as I was saying, I think there's a good tone being struck in the middle there. I think the other related battle that's playing out, and we should remember, OpenAI didn't start last week, and this is not all that it's done, this sort of drama, right? It started a long time ago, and I think the OpenAI Dev Day that happened a couple of weeks ago was actually a big signal to where this space is going in terms of the competition between proprietary models, like an OpenAI, and open source models like a Llama or a Mistral, or in India, an AI for Bharat, for example. And I think that is going to play out as well. What OpenAI's Dev Day showed us, if I could point that out for 1 second, is that commercial models actually might be better from a performance perspective and cheaper relative to all the open source models out there, which is not what the world was expecting a year ago. We all thought open source would win in a big way. So I think that's interesting. And what that showed us was that because these closed source or proprietary models might be cheap and better performing, the application layer on top really opens up. So actually the potential and the impact of AI really dramatically expanded after OpenAI Dev Day. I think that's what we are excited about here at Lightspeed. So I think there'll be healthy competition between lots of different models and LLMs out there, and I think that's all good for the state of innovation at the application layer for consumers and businesses. So that's sort of how we are looking at this. It's sort of somewhere in the middle. It's not overly regulated. It's not a complete open sort of space for anybody to do something that's truly harmful. But it's early days, so we'll see. We'll see where it ends up.
It is. It certainly is early days, and yes, the Biden administration has taken the first move with that executive order that came in on the 30th of October. We are going to take a quick break here on Young Turks and continue our conversation with Sanjay Nath, Khare and Rajesh Sawhney on the lessons to take away from the OpenAI saga. That and more when we return. Welcome back. You're watching Young Turks. We're in conversation with Sanjay Nath, co-founder and managing partner at Blume Ventures. Also with me from the Valley, Khare, partner at Lightspeed, and Rajesh Sawhney, the founder and CEO of GSF Accelerator, as we discuss the lessons to be taken away from the OpenAI saga with Sam Altman's exit and return. Now, Rajesh, as an investor, what is the ask that you have of a board as well as of a founder? Because what we have seen through this episode as well as previous episodes is that either, especially in the case of a celebrity CEO, either the board finds itself beholden to that celebrity CEO, or if there is a rupture, then it becomes a very acrimonious public battle, as we've seen in the case of Bharat Pay, for instance. So what, as an investor, is your ask and expectation of the way that a board and a founder should communicate and lead to conflict resolution if one were to arise?
Yeah, so look, my opening comment would be that board managing the companies through board is still the best way possible for investors. This is an institution that has worked for centuries. Delegitimizing boards as such is not the solution to some of the problems that arise either because of technology-related conflicts or celebrity CEO-related conflicts. So that's that I want to put it on place, right? There is no other mechanism that has been invented or devised to manage companies, right? Now the issue is sometimes boards are beholden to the celebrities, CEOs, right? And let me explain. I was with a late stage investor who's in many unicorn, and he was complaining about early stage investors in the boards that he is on. He said some of these early stage investors, because they have only one or two successes in their portfolio, they either are, he used the word, either feel they're the fanboys of these celebrity CEOs, or they feel kritagya for returning that money. And therefore, they are sort of oblivious to or put a blind eye to many of the things they should be paying more attention to.
Yeah.
So I think this is a real issue, right? And this has happened in many, many cases, especially in Indian context, right? I would not name any company. Yeah. So the issue is this, that from at the earliest stage possible, you have to constitute a board that is in the best interest of the company, and cumulatively also in the best interest of companies, not just investors. Companies is employees, companies is the society that we serve in. Yeah. So that kind of a board has to have representation in the right way, right? So that training and that cultural norms have to be set as early as possible, especially in the cases of some companies which have large impact on the societies. For example, if you take the case of OpenAI, not just like any other company, right? It's a company which is defining the future of humanity. Yeah. So in such a case, and especially it has other complexities, that it's non-profit at the parent level. What kind of board is truly representative of what needs to be achieved through all joint ventures in future, through regulatory regimes that will come, and how does the company navigate through it, through talent loss and talent reduction. Yeah. It is clear to me in this case, this board was not appropriate for those challenges, right? So board has to be appropriate to the nature of challenges the company will feel. That is where the biggest failure is coming, right? Either board consists of fanboys, or consist of people who have, in this case, very fundamental beliefs which are different from the way certain technologies need to be commercialized.
Sure. Sure. Or there is no longer an alignment on what the original vision and execution plan was, and that seems to be the divergence between what was the original plan and where things currently are, seems to perhaps be at at the heart of some of the issues that have erupted. But Dave, this is a complex corporate structure, so let's leave this aside. But for most companies that are dealing with a for-profit corporate structure, as an investor, especially in the experiences that you've had with your own portfolio companies, what would you put on the table so that we don't actually arrive at a situation like this where there is a public sort of battle or dirty linen being washed, and aired in public, etc. What is it that you would like to see? What is the ask and expectation?
I think the couple of principles are at work in most companies as they grow. One is that they'll go through good times and bad times. I mean, every company goes through that. Almost every successful company has gone through a near-death experience, as far as I can tell, in India and elsewhere. So that's going to happen. So you got to organize around that. The second is you got to organize around a board that is small enough and appointed correctly, was said just now, and is very transparent. So there needs to be, and then there are certain basic building blocks that sometimes are missing right from the beginning. Number one is just clean reporting and transparency. I can't tell you how many times and how many companies, not just in India, but elsewhere, it's just not clear what is going on at a company. So I think number one is just clean transparency and that trust building between board and the board includes the CEO and the founders of a company. So they're also shareholders. They're also there to maximize value in most cases. OpenAI's case is different. Sam doesn't have equity in OpenAI, as far as I know. But then your interest should be aligned as shareholders. And then the founders need to be able to think, and the investors, separate the shareholder hat from the duty to the employees and the customers and society, as Rajesh was just saying. So I think both those things need to happen. These basic building blocks need to be in place. And then as companies scale, you need to add more of these governance structures. What's good for a 0 rupee revenue company with 2 people is different from what's good for a $1 billion revenue company. And as far as I can tell, OpenAI is well north of that with its 750 employees. So very different types of governance as companies grow.
Absolutely. Sanjay, I'll give you the final word. Transparency, trust, disclosure, adequate and appropriate reporting. I mean, all of this is essential. All of this is stuff that we often talk about, especially after accidents happen. But in your experience, Sanjay, what is the biggest takeaway that from this episode? And what is the conversation that you would, for instance, have with your portfolio founders at the end of this?
Absolutely. Shereen, we call sounding boards for a reason, right? We live in a culture where we celebrate entrepreneurs and we celebrate, successful entrepreneurs. And this, famous saying that, good news goes, up to the top floor and the bad news is buried in the basement. I think the reason the reason the word sounding board is there is, Dave, and just pulling in threads from Dave and Rajesh as well, is that you've got to pull in the good news as well as the bad news, share transparently, and also have that a very confident and very open, transparent relationship where you can share bad news, you can come with questions, right? Coming back to with the conundrum of breaking the law, I think you want your founders to break the rules in a legal way, not break the law. That should never be confused, right? It's of course you'll never innovate till you break the rules, but legally in a clean way. So the fact is that, I mean, these principles and frameworks have always been there. They just come to the fore now. But the fact is that look at your board as a sounding board, share bad news. And if stuff hits the fan, go to them in advance and not just communicate good news. So I think it's just a good, healthy and tough, hard relationship with very open and transparent communication.
Absolutely. There is a lot, as I pointed out, that is still in the realm of conjecture, and a lot that we don't know about what really transpired at OpenAI. But what we do know for a fact is that there has been a breakdown of communication and there has been a lack of transparency, at least in the way that this is played out. And there are lessons to be learned from that. And as Sanjay, Dev and Rajesh were pointing out, it's imperative to not just ask the questions. That is important for the board as part of its fiduciary responsibility. It's also imperative that founders or the management actually addresses those questions to the best of their ability, with transparency and with appropriate disclosure. And of course, as Mr. Murthy always used to tell me, that let the good news take the stairs and the bad news take the elevator. That is something that we can all keep in mind. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Young Turks from all of us here on the program. Many thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week. Till then, goodbye and see you right after this.